Welcome to this teaching on the spiritual battle. This teaching is specifically on not ignorant of Satan's devices. And I'd like to go to 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 8. And I'd like to read this section, which is a very fundamental scripture regarding the spiritual battle. In 2 Corinthians chapter 2, and verse 8, it says, I urge you, Paul was writing to the Corinthians, and he says, I, Paul, urge you, the Corinthians, therefore, to reaffirm your love for him. The him that he was referring to was specifically a man that he had written about in 1 Corinthians who had committed sexual sin with his father's wife. And Paul had said to put this man out of the church. Now he's writing and he's saying, reaffirm your love for this man. The reason, Paul says in verse 9, I wrote you, was to see if you would stand the test and be obedient in everything. If you forgive anyone, I forgive him. And what I have forgiven, if there's anything to forgive, I have forgiven in the sight of Christ for your sake. Paul again is reaffirming the fact that although this man sinned, and sinned in a very serious way, a way that required that he be put out of the church because he was boasting about it, that Paul then reaffirms that, hey, just reaffirm your love for this man. Bring him back in the church. And also, he needs to be forgiven. You forgive him. I forgive him. Whatever, hopefully he's repented at this point. I'm sure that he probably had. But verse 11, Paul's reaffirming the love and emphasizing forgiveness. Verse 11, in order that Satan might not outwit us, for we are not unaware of his schemes. The emphasis that I want to put in this teaching is on Satan and his schemes. In the King James Version of the Bible, the word schemes is translated devices, which is not necessarily a bad translation. I mean, Satan has methodologies. He has tactics. He has devices. He has schemes that he employs. They have to do with his processes, how he's thinking and how he goes about, deceiving and manipulating, which in fact deception and manipulation are two of his schemes or devices. But I believe that there are two of the most common mistakes that Christians make concerning Satan, and they are based upon two methods or devices that he employs. They are at the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And the first one is he gets Christians to act as if he doesn't exist. There's a lot of people out there that live their life on a daily basis, live as if there is no Satan, there is no devil. It's like the old statement that one of the comedians used to make, the devil made me do it. Well, it was said facetiously, like a big joke. But the fact is that if Satan can get everybody to not even be aware of him, that improves his opportunity to deceive, to manipulate, to control. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is on the one end, the far end of the spectrum, living as if there is no devil, there is no Satan. And when you live that way, it's almost like stepping into the boxing ring with an invisible opponent. Next thing you know, you're being hit from the side and hit from the other side and punched in the back of the head, and you have no idea who's even punching you, because in your mind, it's an invisible opponent. The fact is, Satan is very real, and we don't have to walk around with constantly thinking in terms of him, but it's a big mistake to live your life as if there is no devil, that there is no Satan. On the very far other end of the spectrum, one of the biggest mistakes that people make, or the second biggest mistake, would be assigning too much credit to him, giving him too much of an awareness. Sometimes this shows up as people having an over-infatuation with him. It really bothers me a lot of times where people are always giving the devil credit for everything bad that happens in their life. I believe the devil is so prideful, he will take praise and glory any way he gets it. So when bad things happen to me, if in fact there is some kind of agenda that he's got or something he's orchestrated against me, the last thing I want to do is give him the credit for it. I'd rather put my focus on God and the way in which God is going to deliver me from the difficulties. So I just want to remind you that when it comes to the spiritual battle, being not ignorant of Satan's devices, the first two that we have to be aware of is, number one, that he does exist, because it's a big mistake that most people make, is just not even acknowledging his existence. And on the other hand, the big mistake is giving him too much credit, too much due, and having an over-infatuation with him.